in the world between the covers of books. Such sandstorms and ice blasts of words, such staggering peace, such enormous laughter, such and so many blinding bright lights splashing all over the pages in a million bits and pieces, all of which were words, 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 and each of which were alive forever in its own delight and glory and oddity and light. That is a poem by Dylan Thomas. It's called Notes on the Art of Poetry. We are supposed to be the MCs, Rohini and I. My name is Deesh. I run a project in Bangalore called the Dead Poets Society, where we bring back sort of the words of great poets. And one of the things that we're going to try and do to sort of link everything together over the next 2 days, because there's such a mass of different people coming through, is talk about what poetry is. But we are running late, so we will do that later. And everyone here is here for just one person's voice and words. And Javed Akhtar Sahab is here. So without further ado, let's just hand the stage over to him. Thank you.
Raat, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Without further ado, I think we should start this session right away. And Javed Sahab, I'm going to start with a very, very basic, fundamental sort of question, and then we'll take things from there. What is poetry for you? What does it mean to you?
Wow. I suppose nothing can be more difficult than a simple question. So, what is poetry? Sounds so simple. Let me try to define it. And I know I won't succeed, but let me make an attempt. We can... That was not me. We can say that poetry is the music of language. What is music? Every sound is not music. What makes the sound of music different from the rest of the sounds? It has certain discipline. It has certain scanning. It has certain cycles. And it has certain rhythm. When sounds find a pattern, and pattern finds a cycle where it gets completed at some point, and then you make another cycle and so on, that sound is music. Every sound is not music. The same way, when language finds a discipline, a particular kind of discipline, and a rhythm, and certain tal, I'm using this word tal for a better word, but perhaps there is a certain scanning, certain beat to it inside. Whether it is traditional poetry or free verse. The difference between regular metered poetry and free verse is the difference between a geet and a rag. In rags, you can have alaps which are long and short, but they adhere to a certain scanning. They adhere to a certain beat and certain cycles. So that is what poetry is on one level. Like some 3,000 years back, Pythagoras, the Greek philosopher, had said that music at one level is mathematics. It was totally right. I suppose the same can be said about poetry. But obviously there is a difference between mathematics and poetry and music. The difference is that mathematics is mathematics, and only mathematics, and pure mathematics. The purer, the better. But on the other side, this needs two things, poetry. And as a matter of fact, all art needs two things at the same time. And things which are almost contrary, which are incompatible ostensibly. One is passion, fantasy, imagination, emotion, forgetfulness. Other, complete calculation and craft. No art can achieve any height without a perfect craft. Craft is calculation. Now imagine you need both the things together. Forgetfulness, passion, and objectivity at the same time, and calculation. So I suppose poetry is an exercise in some kind of schizophrenia.
Javed Sahab, you've spoken about rhyme and cycles and so on. But then what do you make of this new hybrid creature that's making its appearance known, certainly in Urdu and Hindi? I cannot speak for Kannada. This thing called prose poetry. What is prose poetry? Does it make sense to you?
Nope. I mean, if prose won't make sense, then whatever we are talking will not make any sense because this is prose. So it better make sense. But these are two different, that's why we have two words, prose and poetry. And both have different, shall I say, pros and cons. So, but obviously they are different. What I fail to understand, maybe this is my limitation, that what is prose poetry? Like I cannot understand what is wet dry. I cannot understand what is living dead, like hot cold. So these are two different disciplines, and if you can say that this prose is very poetic, okay, fine, chalo. But prose poetry making a complete genre and writing anything, but why are you insistent to say that it is poetry? Why don't you say prose? What is wrong with prose? Why you have to add this word poetry into it? If it is beautiful prose, then it is beautiful. There are many prose writers, when you read them, it is as romantic, as imaginative, as beautiful as any poet's poetry. So, are we must ask them, do you think that without putting this word poetry in it, this prose will not get the dignity that it deserves? I don't agree with that. So, prose poetry to me is nothing. Don't call it poetry. It's beautiful prose and let's respect it. But poetry, like the difference between prose and poetry is the difference between talking and singing. However well you are talking, speaking, you're not singing. The difference is speaking. You can be a great speaker and you can be a great singer. But singer, speaker, speaker, singer, that I can't understand.
Javed Sahab, as many of you would know, comes from a family of poets. His father, Janisar Akhtar, was a poet. His grandfather, Mustar Khairabadi, was a poet. We're going to shortly talk about his poetry in a little while. His great-grandmother, Hirma, was a poet at a time when very few women could read and write, and very few women poets were there. His grandfather's grandfather, Mustar Khairabadi, who was politically very active during the First War of Independence of 1857, Fazliha Khairabadi, in fact, he was exiled to Kala Pani because of his political activities, and he was a very, very famous poet. From his mother's side, Majaz, his maternal uncle, his mama, was a rock star in the 40s when Majaz went to read at mushairas in universities and campuses. He was a rock star. Javed Saab, I want to ask you, were you genetically predisposed to be a poet?
Well, as a matter of fact, I mean, in psychiatry, the science believes that no acquired knowledge or acquired prowess is inherited through genes. This is what they believe till today. You won't know what they may think tomorrow, because there was a time when it was believed in psychiatry that for the first 8 weeks, a child is a blank sheet, a clean slate. And after that, writing starts on it. But now they don't believe it. They accept that the child is born with certain traits, certain temperament. It can enhance, it can be repressed, it can be suppressed, it can be molded to some extent, but the child is not a clean slate when the child is born. And perhaps it is understandable also, because if you inherit facial features, mannerisms, and you inherit mannerisms also. It's unbelievable. I must tell you, I'm slightly diverting, but it really surprises me that I have seen a child of 4 or 5 years old, whose grandfather I knew, who died some 20 years back, and this 4-year-old child walks with both the hands behind his back, exactly like his grandfather. Like my own daughter, Zoya. My mother died when I was 8, and Zoya was born when I was 28. And I don't have this habit. It means this habit was traveling in my blood and never manifested itself. That when she is reading or when she is concentrating, she starts twisting her hair. Now, this is the habit I very clearly remember that my mother, whenever my mother was reading, she would do this. And she does, I don't do it. So this habit was traveling. This mannerism was traveling. So, talent, there is a possibility. The talent also must be traveling in the genes to some extent. But I suppose it is not enough. I cannot define the quantum of this talent that travels through the genes. But on the other side, I think it is the environment, circumstances, the kind of atmosphere you have. You see, luckily I was born in a family where there were writers. My elders were writers, so their friends were also writers, and their whole circle was of writers and poets and so on, and journalists. So I sometimes feel that by the time I was 12 or 13, I learned about poetry that much without any attempt, as a matter of without even trying to understand anything, that perhaps some other person who is born in some business family or a family of a sportsman or whatever, in a scientist house where the poetry is not discussed or talked about, this person will have to take a course of 6-7 years to learn that, which I got. As a matter of fact, I see my friends who were born in business families, and they understand even when they were in college, and they were irresponsible. They were the black sheep of the family. They knew so much about a stock exchange that I will have to go to a commerce college for at least 5 years to learn that much, which they learned without not wanting to learn, as a matter of fact. Because it was in the atmosphere and comes into you through some process of osmosis. So I'll be thankful that I got an atmosphere. I got thoughts where it was always there. I was breathing it. So I learned. By the time I was 15 or 16, I could recite other people's poetry. Obviously, I never used to write poetry that time. For hours, I still remember so much poetry of other people that I can recite for 4 or 5 hours. that is thanks to that environment. So, yes, I mean, whether genes or the environment that was given to me on a platter has helped a lot, no doubt about it.
There is a lovely story that you have narrated in print, but perhaps this audience could do with hearing it. You came across a bundle wrapped in a red paper, red cloth, and thereby hangs a tale. Would you like to briefly share that story and maybe read some of the contents?
My father was a poet, his name was Janisar Akhtar. He has written for films also, film lyrics too. And my grandfather, who was by profession in judiciary, he was a judge in Gwalior, and that's where he died. His father and his grandfather and so on and so forth, all of them were in law. Even Fazli Haq Khairabadi, who was the grandfather of my grandfather, he was also in law. From my father's generation, we have become outlaws. So he was a very prolific poet. He has written a lot, and he was published excessively during his time in different magazines and papers and newspapers and weeklies and so on. But somehow his collection was never published. And he died at the age of 57. Perhaps he thought that kar lenge, ho jayega. So, but he died. And it never happened. And his poetry was scattered in different libraries. There was a time, perhaps the books were not published at such large a scale. So I'm talking of early 20th century. He died in 1927, but he became a known poet in the first decade of the century, 20th century. So people used to keep notebooks with different poets' poetry and so on and so forth. This is this poet's poetry. So in that book, his poetry will be there. There'll be another handwritten book in the libraries of Nawabs and Jagirdars, and these are they are still available. So if you trace, you find poets which are not published. Their work you can get in personal libraries of people who have this kind of lineage and so on. So it was all around, scattered, but no book was published ever. And there were some very famous, well-known ghazals which were attributed to, because his book was not published, to some other people. There are many couplets which were well-known, but people didn't know that this is written by so-and-so. Anyway, that is how it was. My father died in 1976. I was living separately in my own house with my children, wife, my family. And after almost 15 years of his death, my younger brother, who was living in that house, decided to shift and sell this house and buy a bigger house. So as he was removing things and shifting, he came across a big carton full of papers, and since he was educated in Bombay, he can't read Urdu. He studied in a convent. So he sent me this carton, thinking that I would know if these papers are for any significance or not. It was a big carton full of papers. ऊपर मैंने देखा तो there were some copies and some धोबी का हिसाब भी था उसमें, written by my mother, इतनी shirts, इतनी साड़ियाँ ये. So I thought, all right, someday I'll see what are these papers. रख दो, देखते हैं. Now this देखते हैं also took another few years. And one day I had nothing better to do. So I said, अरे वो लाओ एक वो था ना डिब्बा, ला देखो क्या है उसमें दिखते. So I started looking at that. There was lot of kachra. Then there were some copies where my father had written his film songs, and you could, when you turn pages, you could see that how the song emerged. He cut this line, then he wrote it again, then he cut those stanzas, then he wrote it again. That's interesting study. So I kept on saying. Then there were some letters which were of certain significance, say, Firaq Gorakhpuri, who was a very, very big poet of Urdu. Raghupati Sahai Firaq, उनके शेर आपने सुने होंगे. Your grandfather's letters, Ala Masroor, her grandfather was a giant in Urdu literature, and other people. And then at the very bottom of that carton, I found a big packet, a bundle of papers wrapped in a piece of red cloth. I opened it, and lo and behold, it was Mustar's poetry, almost 200 and 210 or 215.
Mustar, your grandfather.
Yeah, my grandfather's poetry, handwritten, written by somebody, very clean handwriting. That was lying there. So my father, and then I found a small preface written by him. And he thanked so many people who helped him in collecting that much. It means he was intending to get it published. So I went through that, and I realized that yes, it's a fairly good collection, but there are many couplets and many ghazals that I know of Mustar, and I have read in old magazines in certain libraries or wherever. They are not there. So I was totally convinced, and as a matter of fact, I was quite surprised. Mustar has written a ghazal, I think, which is the longest meter in world poetry, as far as I know. I'll recite one share to you because we hardly have 45 minutes, so I can't recite two shares. So I could see that there is a lot to be collected. I mean, my father, with his limited resources and how he must have done it, I appreciate that. So I decided that let me try to find some more, whatever I can, and then we'll get it published. So I spoke to two young men. They were from Bombay University. They have done their post-graduation in Urdu literature. And I said that you work for me, I'll hire you professionally, and I cannot go everywhere. I can give you the detail where all, that is what I suspect you will be able to find things. And beside that, there is a scattered, larger family. You meet those people, I'll call them. Many of them I have never met personally, ever in my life. But आपको एक बात मालूम है, you hardly know your father's relatives. माँ के relative मालूम होते हैं आपको. Mother never introduces you to your father's relatives. So I thought it will take 6 months, at the most 1 year. But to my surprise and joy at the same time and wonder, it kept trickling down. It kept trickling down. It took us 10 years. And in 10 years, after 10 years, whatever we have published, I will not say that this is all Mustar has written. But whatever we could find is in 5 thick volumes. So that was an experience. And from where and ultimately the cherry on the cake is there is one ghazal that is attributed to Bahadur Shah Zafar. And there has been a discussion about it, whether it is written by Bahadur Shah Zafar or it is written by Mustar. And this discussion was going on in literary circles since almost 70 years. Right after the death of Mustar, this discussion had started, actually. But nobody could reach any conclusion. People had opinions. And that controversy was over through this research. Because I found a book in a library of Lucknow, and in the preface that I have written, I have given the reference of that library, the book, and the page number, where after the death of Mustar, 1 year after the death of Mustar, a book was written by somebody who did not have much love lost for Mustar. As a matter of fact, he didn't like Mustar. And he, in that book, has criticized and run down this ghazal of Mustar after 1 year. And the other thing, which is the last nail in the coffin of this controversy, was pages of a notebook written in Mustar's handwriting. And now I'm familiar with Mustar's handwriting because I collected a lot of letters that he had written to different people. And in that, on a page, he has written this ghazal with his own hands, and underneath that, his other poetry. So now I have printed that in that book, that ghazal in Mustar's own handwriting, and that book which was published in 1928. So this controversy is over forever now. So that was very interesting. So it was a great experience, but at the same time it leaves me very sad on one level, because all right, I was the grandson, I had the resources, I had the tenacity, I pursued it for 10 years, so I could find so much about one poet. But there are so many poets in every language whose poetry you know, perhaps you only know the tip of the iceberg, you know 2 couplets or 10 couplets or 5 couplets, and you know he had written this, but we don't know what else he had written. And it must be available somewhere. All we have to do is to look for it and find it. I think there should be a kind of organization, there should be a society that should work in this direction, that the poets whom we admire and like and we know about, but their books are not available in the world, their collection is not available, we should work in that direction.
Maybe you could read the long Beher. That's usually very interesting to hear.
Okay. You have it?
I'm not sure. Isme
Yeah.
Ji.
This is one couplet. ये एक है.
Let me hold it up.
No, no,
It's
ठीक.
not reverse, it's Urdu start from the other side.
Urdu start from the right side. ओह, उसे क्यों हमने दिया दिल जो है बेमेहरी में कामिल, जिसे आदत है जफाकी, जिसे चिलमेर व वफाकी, जिसे आता नहीं आना गम व हसरत का मिटाना, जो सितम में है यगाना, जिसे कहता है ज़माना, बुते बेमेहर दगाबाज जफा पेशा फसूसात सितमखाना बरअंदाज गज़ब, जिसका हर एक नाज नज़र फितना मजातीर, बला जुल्फ़ गिरागीर गम व रंज का बानी, क़ल्क़ व दर्द का मुजिब, सितम जोर का उस्ताद, जफाकारी में माहिर, जो सितमकेश व सितमगर, जो सितम पेशा है दिलबर, जिसे आती नहीं उल्फत, जो समझता नहीं चाहत, जो तसल्ली को न समझे, जो तशफ़ी को न जाने, जो करे कौल न पूरा करे हर काम अधूरा, यही दिन रात तसव्वुर है कि नाहक उसे चाहा, जो न आए न बुलाए, न कभी पास बिठाए, न रुख साहब दिखाए, न कोई बात सुनाए, न लगी दिल की कली दिल की खिलाए, न गमो रंज घटाए, न रहो रस्म बढ़ाए, जो कहो कुछ तो खफा हो, कहे शिकवे की ज़रूरत जो यही है तो न चाहो, जो न चाहोगे तो क्या है, न निभाओगे तो क्या है, बहुत इतराओ न दिल देखिए किस काम का दिल है, गम अंदोह का मारा अभी चाहूँ तो मैं रख दूँ, इसे तलवों से मसल कर अभी मुँह देखते रह जाओ कि हैं इनको हुआ क्या कि इन्होंने मेरा दिल लेके मेरे हाथ से खोया. This is one line. This is the first pankti, the first line of the sher.
Maybe this is a good time to talk about the nuts and bolts of poetry. Let's talk a little about vocabulary. Does a poet's vocabulary get fixed or formed or kind of stabilized in the early years? Are there replenishments? Are there transfusions over the years? Your own vocabulary, are you conscious, are you aware that it has grown? Your way of constructing a sher or a nazm, has it changed as you have grown? Let's talk a little about your evolution.
and I'll mention the missing link also. See, words are to a writer what colors are to a painter. Colors are not painting. Words are not writing or poetry or prose, anything. But these are the bricks that you use to form your idea in your mind and in your expression. I wonder, how can you think without words? You can feel without your words. If somebody burns you, you will feel. You don't need words to feel that pain. But if you have a thought, there is a difference between feeling and thought. The thought can only be constructed in words. You cannot think without words. And I think the more the bricks, the bigger the building, or the more finesse the structure, because you will have bricks of all sizes and so on. So I suppose for clear thinking and thinking about the intangible, you need a very good vocabulary. Otherwise, you will not be able to tell it to yourself also what you are trying to think. But at the same time, I mean, this is the means, not the end. Sometimes it happens that you start giving so much of importance to language that thought becomes secondary, which is wrong. It has to be a perfect synthesis. The word should serve the thought. And the better it serves, the better literature you create. I think if an architect enters this room, he'll look, all right, so these are the beams, and this is where they have put the pillar. If an interior decorator will enter the room, he'll look at the carpet and look at the source of lights and chandeliers and that work that you have done on the ceiling, this plaster of Paris and so on. If a hotelier enters, he'll feel good. They have kept at least 2 or 3 such halls for such functions. That's good, I mean. So looking at the same thing, or experiencing the same thing, whatever your vocation is, whatever your interest or focus is, you see and understand a thing accordingly. Now, people who deal in words obviously develop extra sensitivity for words, because that is their tool. That is their palette. So, I think over the years, if you are alive, if you are not too happy with yourself and too satisfied that, okay, I have reached, I have arrived. So you keep on honing your skill and you keep on collecting whatever you get on the way while you are moving ahead and refining your technique. If it doesn't happen, then you are static and you will stagnate. But yes, I suppose you get a good start when you are learning. You have dancing schools, you have art schools, you have music schools. You don't have any poetry schools in the world. So how do you learn poetry? How do you develop the skill? How do you become sensitive to words? Words are not only what they are in the dictionary. Words are much more than that. Words are like people. People are not only their vocation. A person enters, you look at the person. The first thing that strikes you is the appearance of the person. The second thing you are introduced, and then you know, oh, he's a doctor. Then you sit down and start talking to him. Where are you from? And the person says that I am from Bombay. Okay, where do you live in Bombay, sir? Juhu. Acha, a friend of mine, he also lives in Juhu. And gradually you find other associations. Even if you don't find associations, he tells about his friends or his circle or his experience. And slowly you slot the person. ये हैं कैसे, ये कौन है. Exactly the same thing happens with a word. When you hear a word, the first thing that strikes you is the phonetics, the sound. The phonetics of the word, the sound of the word is the physical appearance. Then the meaning, this word carries this meaning. That is the vocation of the word, to carry this meaning, like somebody is a doctor. The third thing is the association. A man is known by the company he keeps. A word is also known by the company this word has kept. Balidan doesn't only mean sacrifice. And if we use Balidan everywhere where we want to use word sacrifice, we are misusing the word. Balidan has some cultural background also. This word is also known by the company. You see, it is believed in psychiatry that any noun or any verb creates at least 50 references in an average mind. When I say apple, you don't know, but there are 50 references made. They are on the subconscious level. All 50 references have not come and disturbed you, but they are made. A good writer develops some kind of understanding, indefinable understanding, that this word will make these kind of references on unconscious level in an average reader's mind. And when you feel that magic, ये सारे वर्ड तो डिक्शनरी में थे जो इस पोइट ने लिखे हैं, सबको अवेलेबल थे. ऐसा थोड़ी कहीं और से ले आया है वर्ड. उसको ये पता है कि ये रेफरेंस क्या इसके माइंड में बनेंगे. And you are enjoying this poetry not only because of what it means right there, what has gone in the front lobe, but what has happened behind that in your mind. And you say, भाई बहुत अच्छा लगा. आपको खुद कभी कभी क्लियर नहीं होते क्यों अच्छा लगा, मगर वो आपका जो सबकॉन्शियस में इमेजेस बन रही है, जैसे फिराक जिसका मैंने भी आपको जिक्र किया था, उसका एक शेर बड़ा पॉपुलर है. शाम भी थी धुआं धुआं, हुस्न भी था उदास उदास, दिल को कई कहानियां याद सी आके रह गई. अब ये क्यों अच्छा लगता है? इसमें कौन सा वर्ड है जो आपको एक अजीब सी इथीरियल, इनडिफाइनेबल, एक मिस्टिकल मूड में ले जा रहा है कि नहीं? तो ये ज़रूरी है कि हम इन वर्ड्स से ये रिश्ता रखें और उसको होन करते रहें. तो जो अच्छे पोइट्स हैं, बड़े पोइट्स, आप देखेंगे कि उनका कहीं जर्नी भी है, इंक्लूडिंग गालिब. गालिब का नाम तो सब लोगों ने सुना है, लेकिन even people who can read Urdu and have read Urdu, उनमें भी सब लोग नहीं जानते. They believe they have, because they have heard that he was a great poet. But how great was he and why he was great, ये बहुत कम लोग जानते. Because it is really, I mean, it's a long journey to reach him. तो उसकी भी आप लैंग्वेज जब देखते हैं तो उसमें आपको एक सफ़र दिखाई देता है. फैज़, अनदर ग्रेट पोएट, उसकी भी जब आप पोइट्री देखते हैं तो उसमें एक जर्नी दिखाई देती है. एंड इट इज़ बिकमिंग बेटर एंड बेटर. यू कैन सी दैट ही इज़ रिफाइनिंग इट. और अगर आपने जो 25 साल पहले, 30 साल पहले लिखा था, एग्जैक्टली उसी वोकेबलरी में आप आज भी लिख रहे हैं, तो इसके मतलब ट्रैवल नहीं किया है आपने, कुछ रास्ते में सामान और जमा नहीं किया आपने, वहीं के वहीं है. एंड इट्स अ वेरी वेरी कॉमन प्रॉब्लम इन आवर लाइफ. ख़ासतौर से इन द ईस्ट हमारे यहाँ क्या है कि जो लाइफ की बुनियादी फंडामेंटल ज़रूरतें हैं, जब हमें वो मिल जाती हैं तो हम समझते हैं हम सक्सेसफुल हो गए. which any affluent society or civilized society should take for granted. हमारे यहाँ कामयाब आदमी कौन है? जिसके पास अपना घर है, जिसके घर में टीवी है, जिसके पास एक कार है, जिसके पास एक अच्छा मोबाइल है, फ़ोन, और जिसके बच्चे कॉन्वेंट जाते हैं. These things should be taken for granted. पहले तो, अब तो खैर शुक्र है कुछ ठीक हो गया, पहले तो लोग रेफ्रिजरेटर भी लिविंग रूम में रखते थे. I have seen this. You also must have seen it. तो हम सक्सेसफुल हो जाते हैं and we feel so happy and content with ourselves कि हम फिर ज़रूरत नहीं लगती कि अब इससे आगे क्या है, अब सब कुछ तो हो गया. तो हम कहते हैं कि इन चीज़ों की इम्पोर्टेंस हम नहीं देते, लेकिन सबसे ज़्यादा यही हमको इम्पोर्टेंट लगता है. तो हमारी जो ग्रोथ है वो अक्सर 25, 26, 27 या 30 साल की उम्र तक बंद हो जाती है. उसके बाद जब हम बोलते हैं कि मैं 50 बरस का हूँ, तो एक्चुअली फैक्ट ये है कि आप पिछले 25 साल से 25 साल के हैं.
I've just been told that we have about 5 minutes, and I had many questions still to ask, and I'm sure the audience has questions. But Javed Sahab, this session cannot be complete without you reciting some of your poetry. And I think to save time, maybe just read the Urdu versions and we'll skip the English translations.
I'll do one thing. I'll recite only one poem. Then you read the translation.
I would much rather that they hear several of them and we skip. Why don't you buy the book instead and read the English translations? HarperCollins should be happy with that. No, of course he'll read a poem, but earlier we'd planned to read both the translation. To save time, I'm suggesting that you read maybe 3 of your poems, and those who are interested can just go out and buy the book.
हम सारे लगभग उर्दू समझ रहे हैं, यहाँ पे सारे कवि हैं, हम सभी उर्दू समझते हैं. मुझे नहीं लगता हम में से किसी को अंग्रेजी ट्रांसलेशन की जरूरत है.
आपने बहुत ज़्यादा लोगों की तरफ से गारंटी ली. अब आप उनसे कहिए. इन्होंने वही किया है जो अक्सर आजकल लीडर्स करते हैं. दे क्लेम दैट आई रिप्रेजेंट द होल कम्युनिटी. जी. जी जी, ऑफ कोर्स आई अंडरस्टैंड इट. तो आप Here is a poem. The title is Waqt, time. Now she has the translation. It's because this is the only poem I'm going to recite. So we'll do one thing, comparatively a longer poem. So I'll recite a portion, then she'll read the English translation. All the poems that I have written are translated as a very interesting title selected by a friend, Mr. Alok Rai, who is the grandson of famous writer Prem Chand. In other words, so it has all the poems are on one side in Hindi, and on the other side in English, and on the other side, from the right side, all the poems are in Urdu also. वक्त. ये वक्त क्या है? ये क्या है आखिर कि जो मुसलसल गुजर रहा है? ये जब न गुजरा था तब कहाँ था? कहीं तो होगा. गुजर गया है तो अब कहाँ है? कहीं तो होगा. कहाँ से आया, किधर गया है? ये कब से कब तक का सिलसिला है? ये वक्त क्या है?
Time. What is time? What is this thing that goes on without pause? If it did not pass, then where could it have been? It must have been somewhere. It has passed. So where is it now? It must be somewhere. Where did it come from? Where did it go? Where did the process begin? Where will it end? What is time?
ये वाक़ई हादसे तसादुम, हर एक गम और हर एक मसरत, हर एक कज़ियत, हर एक लज्जत, हर एक तबस्सुम, हर एक आंसू, हर एक नगमा, हर एक खुशबू, वो जख्म का दर्द हो कि वो लम्स का हो जादू, खुद अपनी आवाज हो कि माहौल की सदाएं, ये जहन में बनती और बिगड़ती हुई फिजाएं, वो फिक्र में आए जलजले हों कि दिल की हलचल, तमाम जज्बे, तमाम एहसास, ये जैसे पत्ते बहते पानी की सतह पर जैसे तैरते हैं, अभी यहाँ हैं, अभी वहाँ हैं और अब हैं उछल, दिखाई देता नहीं है लेकिन ये कुछ तो है जो कि बह रहा है। ये कैसा दरिया है, किन पहाड़ों से आ रहा है, ये किस समंदर को जा रहा है, ये वक्त क्या है?
These events, incidents, conflicts, every grief, every joy, every torment, every pleasure, every smile, every tear, every song, every scent. It may be the pain of a wound or the magic of a tender touch, one lonely voice or the sounds around. Successes and failures assailing the mind, the upheavals of care, the tumult of the heart, all feelings, all emotions are like leaves floating on the surface of the water as they swim along, now here, now there, and now they disappear. Though unseen, there must be something flowing along. What is this river? Which hills has it come from? Which sea is it going to? What is time?
कभी कभी मैं ये सोचता हूं कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी समझ जा रहे हैं। कभी कभी मैं ये सोचता हूं कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी समझ जा रहे हैं, मगर हकीकत में पेड़ अपनी जगह खड़े हैं। तो क्या ये मुमकिन है सारी सदियां कतार अंदर कतार अपनी जगह खड़ी हों, ये वक्त साकित हो और हम ही गुजर रहे हों? कभी कभी मैं सोचता हूं कि चलती गाड़ी से पेड़ देखो तो ऐसा लगता है दूसरी समझा रहे हैं, मगर हकीकत में पेड़ अपनी जगह खड़े हैं। तो क्या ये मुमकिन है सारी सदियां कतार अंदर कतार अपनी जगह खड़ी हों, ये वक्त साकित हो और हम ही गुजर रहे हों? इस एक लम्हे में सारे लम्हे, तमाम सदियां छुपी हुई हों, न कोई आइंदा ना गुज़िश्ता, जो हो चुका है वो हो रहा है, जो होने वाला है हो रहा है। मैं सोचता हूं कि क्या ये मुमकिन है सच हो कि सफर में हम हैं, गुजरते हम हैं, जिसे समझते हैं हम गुजरता है वो थमा है, गुजरता है या थमा हुआ है, इकाई है या बटा हुआ है मुंजमद या पिघल रहा है, किसे खबर है, किसे पता है ये वक्त क्या है?
Sometimes I think when I see trees from a moving train, it seems they are going in the opposite way. But in reality, the trees are standing still. So can it be that all our centuries, row upon row, are standing still? Can it be that time is fixed and we alone are in motion? Can it be that in this one moment, all moments, all centuries are hidden, no future, no past? What has gone by is happening now. What will come about is happening now. I wonder, is it possible that the truth is that we are in motion? We pass by and what we imagine is moving is really motionless. Moving, not moving, whole or divided. Is it frozen or is it melting? Who knows? Who can guess? What is time?